There's something here, so I'll take it. Hi guys, welcome. I'm so excited that first time I'm doing anything like this, so thank you all for being here. And for anyone who has heard me talk and knows that I bang on constantly, I'm evangelical about working with Bryan Post, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have him here with us. And so I'm not going to talk, I'm not going to blab on. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you on to let him talk for himself. Thank you for being here, Bryan.
Good morning. So happy to be here with all of you, and thank you for coming out on the Saturday morning. We have 4 hours to get in 25 years of information. I know Suzanne has prompted all of you really well, so I'll probably just be giving you an overview for the most part. It's really important today that any questions you have, please feel free to ask. If you need me to, because of my own accent, you need me to repeat something, I can repeat it. Just we can be very nice intimate group today. So it's really important that you all get as much as I can possibly give you for today. So any questions you have, feel free to ask. Any situations that you have, feel free to ask. I will just let you know that if you ask a question, it's probably going to go into a role play because I like to do role plays. Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump in this morning. I love this quote. Bruce Perry said this in a lecture I was in 25 years ago. He said, an oppositional defiant child is a scared child. And when he said that, it changed everything for me, because I didn't know that at that point. At that point, I was in mental health practice. I was working with kids, working with families, but I had not considered that an oppositional defiant child was a scared child. And the significance is that it is a different way of looking at children. It's a different paradigm, because our traditional way of looking at children is that an oppositional defiant child is a disrespectful child. Now, see, if I say that an oppositional defiant child is a disrespectful child, if Bruce Perry had said to me 25 years ago, an oppositional defiant child is a disrespectful child, how do you think I would have felt encountering an oppositional child? It would have been stressful. And the reason it's stressful is because I would have been viewing the oppositional child as a threat. Because if I view disrespect as not okay, when I see disrespect, that means it stresses my brain and it becomes a threat. Just because he said an oppositional defiant child is a scared child, completely changed my paradigm. Completely changed my paradigm. And that is really so much of today, and this is so much of what Suzanne has shared with you all over the years, it's been years now, is that this is all a different paradigm of thinking. It's a different way, it's a different lens. And the challenge with that is that it is not a traditional lens. The challenge with that is that when you go outside of this room, literally, no one outside of this room is going to believe you when you say an oppositional defiant child is a scared child. No one in your family, no one at the school, none of the teachers, none of the mental health professionals, no one in the community, in the church, no one's going to see it. Now that is scary, isn't it? Because the first thing you're going to think is, well, maybe Bryan Post is crazy. And then you're going to think, well, maybe I'm crazy for believing a crazy person. Well, I am crazy, so let's just answer that. You have no faults about that. I just don't think like everyone else thinks. And I've been thinking this way for over 25 years. And if I had found some other way that was effective, that's what I'd be sharing with you right now. But I have not found it in 25 years. And I have worked with families all over the world. All over the world. And not just having to work with families all over the world, but having worked in their living rooms. So I traveled around working with families in their living rooms. So their families used to say, could you come home with me? And I'd say, yeah, of course. Because that's just what I did. And I would spend 3 days at a time working very intensely and very emotionally, helping them have breakthroughs, but really helping them shift their paradigms. And that's not an easy thing to do in 3 days, but we can make a lot of difference. Now, over 25 years, I think I've gotten a lot better at being able to help you change that paradigm just in a day like today. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, here's the first shift. Trauma isn't cognitive. So you have your left hemisphere, you have your right hemisphere. You have your thinking brain, and you have your emotional brain. When we approach trauma, just like I'm doing right now, we like to talk about it. We like to talk about it. We like to try to figure it out. We like to try to rationalize it and make sense of it, and all that kind of stuff. But trauma is not cognitive. Trauma is an emotional experience. Stress is an emotional experience. See, trauma is any stressful event, which is prolonged, overwhelming, or unpredictable. So any stressful event, which is prolonged, overwhelming, or unpredictable. So the things that you think are trauma are just a very small subset of what trauma actually is. You can have traumatic events that occur every single day. Just walking outside your home, walking down the sidewalk, traumatic things can happen. Stressful things can happen. If you don't get a chance to talk about those stressful things and express those stressful things and then understand them, they can impact you for the rest of your life. So what you have to understand though about trauma is that it's emotional, it's not cognitive. So I can teach you all about trauma. This is very important, I'm about to say. I can teach you all day long. I can give you the blueprints and the science and everything that you need to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. But as soon as you go home and your child is freaking out, guess what happens? You get stressed out. And guess what happens when you get stressed out? Your thinking becomes confused and distorted, and your short-term memory shuts off. So we can learn all the magic today. And as soon as you get stressed out, it all goes away. Because trauma is not cognitive. Nothing today is teaching you something you don't know. Now, there may be these little nuances and this little science here and this little thought, this little idea. Everything about today is teaching you how to feel and to breathe in the midst of stress. That's all it is. Because that's all problem behavior is. Problem behavior is nothing more than an experience of stress. Problem behavior is nothing more than an intense vibration that another person sends off to another person. The magic is how you navigate that vibration. That's really magic. And that is the emotional, not the cognitive. So as soon as someone starts acting out, as soon as your child starts acting out, your teenager threatens to run away or knocks a hole in the wall or any of the crazy stuff that we do when we're stressed out. The first thing you want to do is you want to start trying to think about it and figure it out. Well, then you're already in trouble. You're already in trouble. And I think I left the sign in here. Let me see. Maybe I can tell you how. Let's see. Right. This is perfect. So I do some consulting for this nonprofit. And this nonprofit is called T.I.P. And they send out these really neat packets to school social workers. So T.I.P. is all about being trauma informed, helping people be knowledgeable about someone. And so when the executive director sent me this packet, I said, well, you can't see that very well. So it's not the greatest slide. Well, she sent me this packet. I pulled out this sheet on the top. This is the very first thing I pulled out of the packet. And so it says upstairs and downstairs brain. And see, these go to school social workers. And so I like it because it's really neat. We really like these little things, don't we? These little graphics and these little images. So these go to school social workers. So basically down here on the bottom, it depicts an upset child, right? And it says, name the emotion. So this is really what we are encouraging the school social worker to do with the upset child. But here's something that's important, is I don't make any distinction between a school social worker, between a therapist, between a parent, between someone in the church. There's no distinction when it comes to kids. We're all the same. We're all adults. And our responsibility is to be more regulated than the child, which is calmer than the child, more logical than the child. We're supposed to make more sense than the child. So there's really no difference. So I looked at this, and at the bottom it says name the emotion. So this is when the child is upset. And then it says deep breaths. So we want to get the child to start breathing. And then it says co-regulate. So then we want to help the child regulate the emotions together. Then it says connect. And then it says redirect. Now these are the steps that you're supposed to take. And these are really great trauma-informed steps. They're really great trauma-informed steps. And I have to be careful because I've been saying that we got to go beyond trauma informed to trauma responsive, but I don't want Suzanne to have to change the name of her whole company. Here's the thing. We do have to go beyond being just trauma informed, because being trauma informed can imply just being knowledgeable. We know you all are beyond that, but it can imply just being knowledgeable, and just being knowledgeable gets you this image. It gets you the image that says when a child is upset, you've got to get them to name the emotion. Well, you've already missed it. You've already missed it. And as soon as I got this is the first time I got this packet. Within 5 minutes, I was emailing the executive director and said, hey, you probably need to reconsider this image. Because to get the child to name the emotion and upset is absolutely illogical. The only reason I want to get you to name your emotion when you're upset is because I'm upset and I don't recognize it. How do you feel? How do you feel? Tell me how you feel. So completely stressed out. I don't know. This is what we do. This is what we do. So then you want to get the child to breathe. Take some deep breaths. Take some deep breaths. You need to breathe. You need to calm down. You need to come breathe with me. This is what we do. This is what we do. And in the most non-threatening, non-harmful, we think that we are being like knowledgeable and educated, and we're missing the point from the very beginning. When the child is upset, the first thing we have to do is breathe. We have to breathe. Because if we don't breathe, the next thing we're going to do is be trying to get the child to name their emotions and getting them to breathe. So we have to breathe, and we have to realize in that moment No one's gonna die and everything's gonna be okay. Because in the moment of stress, the first thing your brain does is it says, I'm gonna die. And as soon as that happens, you start wanting to control and suppress and change the behavior. So your focus becomes completely on the behavior. And when your focus is completely on the behavior, you're just getting more and more and more and more stress. And as you get more stressed, the child gets more stressed until we're both just exhausted. Right? So the first thing I said is when the child's upset, you don't name the emotion, the adult starts breathing. The adult starts breathing. Once the adult starts breathing, then the adult names their emotion. They name their emotion. You don't get the child to name their emotion because when emotion kicks in, cognitive goes out the door. Your emotional brain makes up 75% of your brain. Your cognitive brain makes up 25%. When your emotions kick in, your thinking goes out the window. Remember that. The moment you become stressed, your thinking goes out the window. How do you pull your thinking back into the window? Breathing. Breathing. But in the 1970s, Herbert Benson was a physiologist in Harvard, and he discovered something very important that we do when we're stressed. You know what it is? We hold our breath. He discovered that when we become stressed, the first thing we do is we start holding our breath. Now, when you fast forward 20 years to the decade of the brain, which was the 90s, in neuroscience, we learned when you're holding your breath, there's something really important that's happening. You're releasing cortisol, which is your brain's stress hormone. So then when Joseph Ledoux said in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted, and our short-term memory is suppressed. He said exactly what Herbert Benson said in the 70s. When you're stressed, you start holding your breath and you start taking very short, ineffective breaths. Now you're becoming stressed, and now you can't remember. So the first thing we have to do anytime you encounter a stressful experience is you have to start breathing. You have to start breathing, and you have to ask yourself, how am I feeling? How am I feeling? Now, this made a lot of sense to me over 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago, I had a parent. She reached out to me and she said, my daughter talks nonstop about nothing at all. Incessant chatter is what it was like. She says, what do I know about that? I said, do you ever listen to her? And she said, no. I said, let's start there. 20 minutes every day, turn off the television, put down the newspaper, and just look at her and just listen. Because a child who's talking incessantly is a stressed out child. And if you're not listening to her, it's stressing her even more. Okay, so Mom addressed that. A couple weeks later, she emailed me again. She said, every single night, I go in my daughter's room. It is a bath time bath. She said, I go in her room and I say, hey, it's time to take a bath. And it's the 9-year-old adopted child. Adopted mom was 65 years old. She said, for the last 4 years, when I go into her room and I say it's time to take a bath, she starts flipping out on the ground, kicking and screaming. And what I've been taught to do is to jump over her, which is called restraint, until she calms down. Once she calms down, we go into the bathroom. She sees the tub and she starts fighting. But this time, she's going to take that bath, even if I've got on all my clothes. I put her in that bath, water splishing and splashing everywhere. And then we both fall out of the tub exhausted. And then she won't go to sleep. She said, what do I do about that? And I was thinking, you should call someone else. And after that, I said, here's here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. Tonight, when it's time for your daughter to take a bath, and you go into her room, and you say it's bath time, and she starts flipping out like she's done for the last 4 years. I want you to sit on the bed. So while she's flipping out, I want you to sit on the bed. I want you to take 3 to 10 deep breaths. I want you to get in touch with how you're feeling. And then I want you to call me back. Because what I'm interested in is what is your reaction when she's having that flip out? We know what her reaction is. I know that she doesn't take that. But how are you feeling? So I said, do that. 3 to 10 deep breaths. Get in touch with how you're feeling. And then call me back. Don't do anything else. She said, well, that doesn't seem like very sound therapeutic advice. She was a retired marriage and family therapist. So she'd been around the block for a while. I said, well, give it a shot. She said, okay. So 4 days later, she called me on the phone. Hey, Bryan. I said, hey, man, what's going on? She said, you're never going to believe what happened. I said, okay. Try it on. Try me on. She said, I went into my daughter's bedroom. I said, it's time to take it back. She started flipping out, kicking and screaming like she always does. But instead of jumping on it, this time I sat on the bed. As I was sitting on the bed, I felt like a complete idiot sitting on the bed with my 9-year-old still on the tantrum in the middle of the floor. She said, but do you realize in less than 10 seconds, she completely stopped what she was doing, climbed up on my lap as if she needed a hug, realized that she didn't, and then she went and got in the bath. Mom said that was too much for my heart. 6 months later, when I went out to work with this family, I found out when this little girl was picked up from Child Protective Services at the age of 3, she had lice so thick on her, picking off with the fingers. So taking her back for her was like post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, Mom had given up washing the child's hair. She would take her to the hairdresser. She said, I'm not doing it. But what was Mom's side? Mom's side is that when she was a little girl, she said, had an older sister. She said, my older sister used to sit me down in front of her and she would just scream in my face. And she said, it used to freak me out. So basically, when Mom says it's time to take it back to the little girl's going into her post-traumatic stress, and then she's screaming and flailing, and Mom's going into her post-traumatic stress. But Mom had been taught in her post-traumatic stress to jump on the child. So when I said, sit on the bed and breathe, I just completely interrupted that. Just completely interrupted that. But in stress, you don't think about doing that kind of thing. In stress, you don't think about breathing. In stress, you just get more scared. And you do 3 things. You want to control, you want to suppress, and you want to change the behavior. That's all you want to do. Control, suppress, and change the behavior. So I'll tell you later today about another mom where we'll tell that same story. So the first thing we have to do as adults is we have to breathe. We have to get in touch with how we're feeling. And then when we're doing that, then we start co-regulating. You start co-regulating without saying a word. You don't have to say a word to co-regulate. You don't have to do anything to co-regulate because co-regulation is a vibration that your brain sends up. See, we have mirror neurons in our brains. Nothing I do, I have not to do anything for my mirror neurons to talk to your mirror neurons. If I'm just calming myself down, your mirror neurons will mirror the vibration I'm sending off. See, this is where we get messed up, is we don't realize how powerful our vibration is. Have you ever said to your child, it's okay, we're fine, you're safe. You're sending a different vibration. It doesn't match your face. The mirror neurons are picking up on the vibration. So we don't realize it's the vibration that's creating things. And then we think, oh, that's kind of woo-woo. That's woo-woo science vibration. Anyone use a cell phone this morning? That's called a vibration, right? That's a vibration. You attend the Zoom, that's a vibration. Everything is vibration. That's how we connect. That's how we're all connected. Through vibration. Alan Shore, who's a neuroscientist, says that's the core of the self. The core of the self, the core of who we are, is nonverbal and unconscious. So it's nothing you say, it's nothing you're even thinking. He said, the core of the self is nonverbal and unconscious and lies in patterns of self-regulation. It's not what you say, it's not what you do. It's how you feel when you're doing and saying it. That makes all the difference. So co-regulation begins to occur when I have regulated myself. When I have regulated myself, now I am co-regulated with you. Now that I am co-regulated with you, half the time I already know how you feel. I already know how you feel. So then I don't need to ask you to name the emotion. Because I can just say, hey, I'm feeling kind of freaked out right now. You're looking kind of freaked out. See, now we're co-regulating. Now we're connecting. Now we're connecting. And as I'm doing that, I'm helping the child speaking come back online. I'm helping the child step into safety. And when I start doing that, now I can get back to the connecting and the redirecting. But I can't do any of that until I start breathing. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's go here. I love this. I used to say it all the time. Finally, I said to Jasmine, make a slide for this and talk about it. If a ship is off course by just 1 degree, when it leaves the dock, after sailing for 100 miles, it will miss its destination by more than a mile. If it's off by just 1 degree, I think this is what has happened in parenting. What we've been taught throughout the generations has been off by a degree. And now, hundreds of years later, we're in trouble. We keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. We keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. We were off by a degree and left it up. The GPS system's messed up. We ever had your GPS system mess up, freeze up, reroute you. Yeah, that's what our GPS systems do. Because if something's working, you don't have to keep doing it. If something you're doing is working, you shouldn't have to keep doing it. But if you find yourself doing more of it, that's fine. See, in our society, we like to take the things that aren't working and do more of them. Like for me as a kid, it was getting weapons. Like one weapon, was going to get another weapon, and then another weapon, and then another weapon. It did not work. That's why you have to keep doing it. So if you have to keep doing it, it's not working. It's not creating what it needs to create. Back up just a little bit. Okay. So chronic isn't cognitive, it's emotional. We must learn to stop thinking and start feeling. See, this is the paradigm shift. The paradigm shift isn't a thinking. You all have all the answers already. You know more about your children than I'll ever know. You are the experts of your children. You're the masters of your children. You know you have all the answers. But it's not about the answers in your thinking brain. It's about the truth in your heart. It's about the truth in your heart. But you can't be in your heart when you're stressed. When you're stressed, you're in your head. So you have to slow down. You have to breathe. You have to calm yourself down. And you have to allow yourself to get into a heart space. Because healing is emotion. Healing is emotional. It's not thinking. If it was just about thinking, you'd have read the book and you'd never come here because it's all to figure out. But it's not about what's in the book. It's about what's in your heart. That's what matters, what's in your heart. But you can't get there if you're stressed and scared. If you're stressed and scared, which happens automatically, because as soon as you become stressed, your cellular system can stress into survival. As soon as you become stressed, and you can be stressed in any of your sensory pathways, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch, temperature. digestion, movement, intuition, all those things cause you to be stressed till you don't even realize it. Right now, I'm getting warm. People are really comfortable. Right? You're comfortable. I always know my audience is comfortable because I sort to get hot. Right? And if I was completely comfortable, you all would be doing this. Well, that's fine. But I'm aware of the temperature. I'm aware of the temperature. And because I'm aware of it, then I don't allow it to stress me out. In fact, when I use it, helps me get more warm and warm and warm and warm. And I'm thinking, focus, I'm appreciating it. So let's learn to stop thinking and start feeling. Any questions here? Any questions? Any questions? Yes, yes, sir.
I think you get used to stressing in a response and maybe subconsciously hold on to it and some from your end. Do
Say the first part of that again.
you think you get used to stressing to it?
So not only do we get used to it, it becomes a pathway in our brain. So that's when this gets difficult. This isn't just changing your thinking. This is actually rewiring your brain. See, change doesn't, no change occurs unless your brain changes. That's what we have to understand. If you don't change the brain, then nothing else is going to change. And that's why you can decide that you're not going to buy any more shoes. And after 3 trips to the mall, you've bought no more shoes, but on the 4th freaking trip, you see a pair on sale that you must have because you didn't spend long enough. The repetition, because there's 2 things that change your brain: repetition and emotional impact. Repetition and emotional impact is what changes the brain. Now that's beautiful. The repetition is easy, but it's not. It's simple, but it's not easy. The repetition is, I've been teaching this for 25 years. This is like my career. Almost my entire professional career has been this. I spent for my first 2 years trying to figure this stuff out, probably first 3 or 4 years trying to figure this stuff out. When I did, this is all I've taught. So I had constant repetition, constant repetition. So this is how my brain is now formed. My brain doesn't even allow me to think a different way. It just won't do it because it's just been conditioned. So it's been rewired. So repetition. So that's the reading and the talking and being in support, and being in a community with other people. Because just like I said, once you walk out of these doors, then 95% of those people are going to think you're nutty. So you got to come back to Suzanne because that's your community. Because that's the community of support of like-minded people. That's how you get repetition. She's not going to give you something that's going to lead you down the opposite path. Well, she's going to give you something that's going to be supportive. So that's how you have repetition. And you read the books and you listen to the videos. You read the books and listen to the videos. Constantly, that's changing your brain. And then the emotional impact. This is important. The emotional impact occurs in the moment of the behavior. Now it's going to get serious. This is where you start getting uneasy. Everything else sounds good until it gets to this point. When your child is in the midst of their behavior issues, that's when you have the greatest opportunity for healing. Bruce Perry says the brain always returns to the way the event was handled the last time. Now think about that for a moment. The brain always returns to the way the event was handled the last time. So if your child has a behavior issue, however you deal with it in that moment is going to be what their brain is going to return to the next time. Because they don't just have one behavior issue, and they don't just do it once, do they? Oh, they do it over and over and over and over and over because their brains are wired. Your response is what leads to the rewiring. But in order to get to the rewiring, you've got to do something different in the presence of the behavior. If you do the same thing in the presence of the behavior, which is create more stress. See, this it gets difficult, but it's actually very simple. If you do the same thing, which is create more stress in the midst of the behavior, guess what doesn't change? The behavior. The behavior doesn't change because the child's brain is wired the way the child's brain is wired. So the only way the child's brain starts to rewire is if you do something different. Because having the more mature brain, you have the capacity. You have the capacity to create a different experience for it. But if you don't create a different experience, then children grow older, they don't grow better. They grow older, they don't grow better because we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. The easiest thing in the world is to kick a child into therapy. That's the easiest thing outside of these doors. That's what everyone wants to do. The most difficult thing in the world is to do our own self-analysis, our own self-work, to look at ourselves first. Because this is where healing starts. This is where healing starts. Even in your own home, healing starts with you. Even in your own home, with your children who have never met. If I was to meet your child, healing starts with me. So what I offer you today starts with me. It becomes really important. See, I have to send you home today with a message of hope and healing and love, because healing starts with me. It starts with me. God said, be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Not send your child to play therapy so they can get changed, so the world can change. But be the change you want to see in the world. So that's the work that we have to be about today. So we have to learn to stop thinking and start feeling. Here's what I want you to do. Here's how I'm going to help you with that. When you go home today and your child starts acting out, as they surely will. In fact, I hope they will. Seriously, I hope that there's some little nut balls. That's the only way we're going to get to practice, right? We're going to get to practice. That's the thing. It's going to be practice. So you're going to be looking forward to it. You're going to be looking forward to it. So, and because you're looking forward to it, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be perfect little angels. I can tell you why that's going to happen too. Because when you start looking forward to it, your amygdala, which is your fear receptor in your brain, is always looking to predict. It's always looking to predict. It's always looking for a threat. So if all of a sudden you're looking for your child to act out, then you don't feel threatened. You're just like, okay, all right. Let's put this Bryan Post. Then you're going to be so regulated that you're not going to get hijacked. And he's going to be like, however, some of you will still be anxious, and that's okay, because that's how your brains are wired. You'll be anxious, you'll be scared, be nervous. Even if I tell you to expect it, we want it. We want the negative behavior. We want the negative behavior because that's the feeling, because that's where the healing is at. We don't want to avoid it, we actually want it. I don't get scared by it. I get excited. I don't get scared by negative behaviors. I get excited. I'm like, oh yes, good. This is good. Look at Lost Limbs. It's so pumped. So here's what you gotta do. You're not just thinking that. You just gotta breathe. You're gonna breathe. You're gonna breathe because that's the emotion. And as soon as you get stressed, as soon as you see them acting out, here's two things you say to yourself. You say, number one, I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna die. And number two, you say everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right. This is like secret powerful speaks because they speak to your unconscious. Because your amygdala is a little fear receptor. As soon as your child starts acting out, the fear amygdala says, I'm gonna die. But as soon as you say to your amygdala after taking some deep breaths, you say, I'm not gonna die. Your amygdala goes, really? And then when you say everything's going to be okay, your amygdala goes, oh, okay. And then you calm down. And when you calm down, I don't want you to do anything else. That's all I want you to do. I just want you to hold that space, and now I want you to watch your child spin out of control like a little Tasmanian devil. Just watch it. Just watch it. And as you watch it, so many things are gonna happen. One thing that's gonna happen is your brain is gonna have one experience that says your child can have their emotions and nobody dies. You see, right now, you think your child having emotions means something's gonna die. That's why you want control and suppress and change. So as soon as you can take that deep breath and you say, I'm not gonna die, everything's gonna be all right, your brain calms down, you start releasing another hormone called oxytocin. And now you're watching your child. You're just watching. And as you're watching them, now you can see them differently because your brain's not been hijacked. See, when your brain's not hijacked, you can see that 15-year-old drops down to a 5-year-old. When you see that 15-year-old drops down to a 5-year-old, you're gonna go, oh my goodness. Which is then gonna relax you even more. Because now you're not worried about 15-year-old who looks exciting. Now you're looking at a 5-year-old. And you're like, oh. You know what's happening to them is that the 5-year-old is now not getting the negative reinforcement that they're used to getting. So as they're not getting the negative reinforcement that they're used to getting, guess what happens to them? They go, oh, what's going on? This is weird. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you yelling? Why aren't you? They're waiting for it because that's how their brain is wired. Just want you to do that one time. One time. Just want you to try it. Because you're looking from a different lens. But you have to remember. And you can't be afraid of those words. I'm not gonna die. You can't be afraid of those words. Can you imagine? We work with traumatized children. Children who have spent for some of you, your children spent their earliest years feeling like they were gonna die, and then we're afraid of saying, I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna die, and everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right. The world is not falling in. That's what your amygdala makes you think. Your amygdala makes you think the sky is falling, and it's not. It's not. But you got to turn that thing off. If you don't turn that thing off, it looks like pure chaos. So that's what you have to do. Okay. The feeling is the path to the healing. We're going to get into this. Talk about that. Talk about that. This is perfect. And then we're going to take a little break. Because I know you all love your tea time. So Dad was like, what are the breaks going to be? What are the breaks? I'm like, we're not taking breaks. She's like, are you crazy? There's no break. There's no breaks. Ooh, okay, we'll take breaks. 3 pathways of emotional expression. We all have 3 pathways through which we express energy. Energy. And why do you express the energy? You have to express the energy, number 1, because that's all we are. All we are is energy. Number 2, you have to express it to move it. Because if you don't move it, it stays stored. Stephen Covey. And if you remember Stephen Covey, he wrote a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said, upset feelings never die. They are buried alive and come back to something uglier. The energy has to move. The energy has to move. So you have 3 pathways. The first is attitudes. You express energy through your attitudes. You know, you're attitudes like your parents, rolling your eyes, mumbling your friend, right? No. But that's a natural pathway of expression. Underneath attitudes is feelings. As a child, I mean, people talk back, yell at your parents, first my parents' house. I didn't want to look at you. No, definitely not. But feelings is an emotional pathway. And then the third are behaviors. Anyone able to just get away with having all kinds of negative behaviors? No, you snuck out and got drunk with your friends and smoked cigarettes and did all that stuff. Right? Your parents didn't know, or when they did find out, you got in trouble, right? Attitudes, feelings, and behaviors. In our society, we don't allow behaviors from children. And because we don't allow behaviors from children, that's what happens. So if you can't express through your attitudes, you can't express through your feelings, and you can't express through your behaviors, you only have two options: anger and depression. Anger and depression become your only two options, and anger and depression have to come out through behaviors. Anger and depression have to come out through behaviors. You only have these three pathways: attitudes, feelings, and behaviors. If you can't express your attitudes, you get suppressed to your feelings. If you can't express to your feelings, you get suppressed to your behaviors. If you can't express with your behaviors, you get suppressed with anger and depression. And anger and depression have to come out through behaviors. I call this, if you live in this triangle for 6 months or longer, I call this the trauma triangle. How do you know you're in the trauma triangle? As a parent, you know we're in the trauma triangle if you get diagnosis, medication, and this is just a very small list. Diagnosis, medication, residential treatment, disruptive placements, and restraint. I actually developed this while working with a group of adolescent boys in a group home, ages 13 to 18. This is where this really got locked in for me. I remember, and that's probably why I put these things, because I was talking about my boys in our group home who had been kicked out of every possible placement in the state of Virginia. Some had been kicked out and were out of the state. We brought them back in the state into our group home, and I realized that this is what was going on. Most of those boys were restraint addicted. They had spent so much time in their lives being restrained that when they would get really upset, they would spin in circles. I just watched it one day. I watched this kid just seem so worked up, and he was just spinning in a circle. He just wanted someone to restrain him because he had not developed any internal mechanisms for control. And that's what we do to kids. What we do to kids out of learning to control, suppress, and change is we don't allow them to develop internally because everything outside of them is trying to control them. It's gotten to the point that it is almost pure insanity when it comes to like juvenile probation, right? Do you guys have juvenile probation here? Have you noticed at this point that juvenile probation workers don't actually want your kid? They like to still threaten them. If you don't come in at curfew, then we're gonna call the judge. Please don't call us. Because they don't have anywhere to put them. Because that's just more stress and more fear. See, our systems are so insane with fear and stress and control that they are combusting. They're coming apart at the seams. But you know what? Because we're so stressed out and fearful, we just keep doing more of the same. We're not doing anything different. And so our systems just continue to get stressed and strained. So no, we don't know what the end is going to be. So here's the thing. I can end 70% of your problems. I can end 70% of your behavior problems today. But you're not going to believe me because it's going to feel too stressful. It's going to go against everything that you heard from mom and dad, grandma, and great grandma and great grandpa. But to end 70% of the problems that you have today, ignore the attitudes. Ignore the attitudes. Because an attitude is nothing more than an expression of energy. That's it. An attitude is not disrespect. You've been lied to. It is not disrespect. I tell you, now you're really going to be considered crazy. You walk out here and you say an attitude is not disrespect, it's just energy. What? Ignore the attitude. Because the attitude is just the child's attempt to transition the energy to do the thing that you've asked it to do that they really don't want to do. And anytime someone asks you to do something you really don't want to do, guess what you do? You have an attitude. I'm going to ask you to look at something that you don't really want to do. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. Watch. You will have an attitude. Not that you won't do it, but you'll have an attitude. Because you have to transition the energy. You have to transition the energy. By transitioning the energy, that allows you to go ahead and do it. That take care of 70% of the problems you have, because it'll never go anywhere other than that. But what if we drop the feelings? Now this will take care of 90%. 90%. Encourage the feelings. Encourage the feelings. Accept the feelings. Want the feelings. Don't tell me how intense I am about this. If I believe, and I don't believe, I know that the feeling is the pathway to the healing. So I know that the feeling is the pathway to the healing. Because I know it's the unexpressed feeling that's driving the behavior. I'll say that again. I know that the unexpressed feeling is what's driving you to behavior. Now, if I can convince you all of this, your life's going to get a lot easier. It might get backward, but it's going to get easier. If I know that the feeling is the key to the healing, and my child is having feeling, yelling, disgusted, whatever they're doing in their madness, and I say, let it out. Give it to me. Let me hear it. What else? Let it go. Come on. I can take it. Get it on out. Let's have it. Let it go. I want it. I need it. What's your child going to do? You're crazy. And then it will go their room. Or they might let you have it, but 90% of the time they're going to shut down because they're not used to it. And so they shut down, they go to their room, that's great. You can have it on the line, you'll have to deal with them. That's what you want anyway. But how crazy are we? How crazy are we when our children start yelling and then they go to the room, they slam the door, we follow them. How many of you take the door open and just that's insanity. Who wants that? We don't realize it in the moment. We don't realize it in the moment. Your child's room is a pigsty. You take the door off. All you're going to be doing is looking at that dirty room. It's going to drive you crazy. Stop it. Just stop. Let them go to the room. Let them slam the freaking door. And then praise the Lord. And they're not even fixing. Is that not the greatest thing ever? All I just say, well, let it out. Well, let it out. Tell me how you feel. On rare occasion, they may, but you know, the problem with that is that goes against all of our cultural conditioning. It goes against the way we were raised. So you have all of this energy that's saying that child cannot talk to you that way. Are you crazy? He's disrespecting you. He's going to grow up and he's never going to have a job. And then he's going to lose a job and get all his kids. Look at that with you again. Don't do it. Take that door off of the hinges now. It's the only safe thing to do. Stress causes confused and distorted thinking and suppresses the short-term memory. When we're stressed, we're not thinking clearly and we don't remember. So we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We have to stop. But the only way you can stop is if you start breathing. You have to learn to breathe. I've been carrying this bowl, and I noticed beautiful bowls in there. Oh. And I've been carrying this bowl for 25 years. It's handmade. And it does nothing more than it tells us when after a break when we're going to start back. So I don't say, okay, come on, guys. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, come on back. We're about to start back now. I don't do that. All that do is bring the bowl. You bring the bowl, it's got a second and most important reason. It is a cue to take 3 deep breaths. Inhale in through your nose. Exhaling from your mouth. Let's breathe 3 times. Bruce Lee says, the greatest lesson in life is to master the ability to remain calm. The only way you remain calm is through breathing. So you practice your breathing, not when you're stressed. Because when you're stressed, you forget. You start holding your breath, you start taking very short, ineffective breaths. You practice your breathing when you're calm and you get conditioned. You get so focused on breathing, that you grow in complete awareness. You don't get worked up because you're breathing. You're so busy breathing, you can't be busy yelling. If you're yelling and talking, you're not breathing. You're not breathing. So when you hear the bowl, it is a cue to take 3 deep breaths. Now, what's going to happen is the first time I'm reading the bowl, because you don't realize you're stressed, but you are. You're not going to remember what I just said 5 minutes ago. So you're going to keep talking. And then if you do remember, you're going to feel really awkward. You're going to be like, well, I'm having this conversation. I can't just look at you right now. So you don't think of each thing. And then you're going to wait for him to start doing so someone can breathe. No. Breathe. Hear the bowl, breathe. That's all I want. Hear the bowl, breathe. Hear the bowl, breathe. And whoever you're talking to, if they start breathing before you do, then you have to say, good job. Okay? Breathe, take 3 deep breaths. Okay, let's finish this. So, ignoring the attitudes, encourage the feelings. When you do that, rarely can you get down to behaviors, but when you do get down to behaviors, to the anger, the depression, and behaviors, here's what you do. Everyone wants a solution for dealing with behaviors. There isn't one. You know why there isn't one? Because in behaviors, when you get to behaviors, everyone's already stressed. Everyone's already stressed. So I can't actually give you a solution to the behavior. I've got to get you to breathe. When I can get you to breathe, then you can ride the behavior out. The goal is not to get to behavior. The goal is to prevent the behavior from ever occurring. That's the goal. So what we learn in the group home with our boys, we had 6 of them, is that it took us 6 months, 6 months to get them out of anger and depression and behaviors, to get them up to attitudes and feelings. So if we do work with them and be supportive and being encouraging for 6 months consistently, we can get them out of anger, depression, and behaviors and get them up to attitudes and feelings. If I can get them up to attitudes and feelings, guess what? That's called living. Because when your boss or your spouse tells you something that you don't want to hear, what do? You roll your eyes, you mumble under your breath, you flip them off when they walk away. If it's something you really don't want to hear, you'll have words with them, right? That's what we do as adults in our society. Can I say that again? As adults in our society, we get to have attitudes and feelings, and guess what? No one dies. No one dies. Has anyone in here ever been fired, been terminated by having an attitude with your boss? Probably not. But isn't that what we tell ourselves about our kids? Well, we can't let him have attitudes because he has attitudes with me. When he gets older, he has bosses that have attitudes with his boss, and he's gonna get fired. It's just fear. It's just fear. That's how we transition energy, because that's all this is. It's just transitioning energy. We want our children to have attitudes and feelings, and guess what happens? Guess what happens when you raise your children having attitudes and feelings? Number one, they never drop into behaviors. They never drop into behaviors. And number two, because they've learned that if you can accept their attitudes and their feelings, they don't have to have them with everyone else. They don't have to have them. I don't have to yell at anyone else. I don't have to. My little Jasmine, my executive assistant, and that's my wife out there also. Jasmine, my little executive assistant, she's been with me for probably the last 3.5 years. And she's just like a walking testament to this work. We got to the hotel the other day and checked into her rooms, and she went to her room and went to dinner. And she's like, "Does your room smell?" Like, oh, she's like, "Oh my God, she's really sensitive. She's had her own stuff she's worked through." She said, "My room really smells." I said, "Okay." So when we got back up and talked to the lady, "Can you see about getting Jackson a different room? We got a full hotel." And that's really, she said, "It's still heating up. I'll get her some spray or something." And she said, "Well, we went up there and sprayed like we got." And so Cynthia and I went to our room, and then Jasmine went to her room. And then a little while later, Jasmine messages Cynthia, and she's like, "I almost had it out. I almost had it out with the hotel lady. And she came up to my room and I said, 'Don't you smell?' She said, 'I don't smell anything.' So she had the other guy come up and he said, 'Actually, I do smell it.' And she got mad and she left. He gave me a coupon for a free beer. Because the way it's, and then she called me back later and she was being all nice. I didn't even want to hear it. I said, "Okay, whatever." So, the next thing we were walking, she's like, "But Post, I was so regulated. I was so regulated. Post, I was breathing for so long. Because she knows her feelings are okay. So you don't have to yell at people. We don't have to get all worked up. You just express yourself. And you express yourself some more, but you don't have to yell, and you don't have to fight. You feel like you want to fight, but you don't, because you can regulate yourself. And that's what we want for our children. We want our children to have attitudes and feelings so they never get to behaviors. But in our society, what we do is we focus exclusively on the behaviors. And the reason we focus on the behaviors is because of our mental, because of our fear receptor in our brain, because your amygdala is always looking for threats. And when the child has the behavior, your amygdala is reacting to the threat and it wants the threat to go away. So all we try to do is control and suppress and change the behaviors. But guess what we're not doing in the process? We're not teaching our children what to do. By focusing on the behaviors all the time, we're not giving our children any other options because there is no other option. So when you send a child to residential treatment, or when you've gone 6 months of welfare and the child is diagnosed, your child gets a diagnosis. What is the diagnosing? Behaviors. You take them to the psychiatrist and they give them medication. What is the medication medicating? Behaviors. You send them to a residential treatment. What do they focus on in residential treatment centers? Behaviors. You disrupt the placement, adoption placements, and foster care placements, disrupt all the time. Why? Behaviors. You restrain behaviors. So then what are we teaching our children? Because children learn through model. They're learning through model. If the brain always returns to the way the event was handled the last time, what are they learning? They're learning nothing. So they're growing older but not growing better. So we've got to give them opportunities to start having their attitudes, expressing their feelings, and not ever dropping into behaviors. And when they do drop behaviors, we work through it and then we move on. Let's take a break, listen for the ball, and take 10 minutes. Start back. Oops.
I like the justice state of the tribal circuit here and website here. We speak of coffee and hold